Hello, everyone. It is Sunday, the 4th of February, 2024. I did a video earlier. I said it then, I'll say it again, 2424. Reverse that's 42. What apparently is the answer to the universe. Guardians of the Galaxy I'm referring to. And even the word dawn in Gematria can be seen as like a English ordinal, the number 42, which is interesting because that's my name. And so I was going to wait until tomorrow to talk about weather modification, geoengineering, HAARP, all of that stuff. I've been talking about this for years. And so for anyone that is sick of that, I totally get it. And you can look at my previous videos that I've done on Rumble that you may not have seen yet. Because if you're watching me on X or YouTube, I've had multiple deleted accounts. And so where I've been able to keep most of my content is on Rumble. And my name on Rumble is Dawn189. I've talked about HAARP before, so have other people that are considered to be truthers, but like I don't even know if you'd call me that. Like I'm an international security analyst, and I just so happen to know, the reality of the world more than a lot of people because of people refusing to look, and it is what it is. And it seems like the people that are like the least willing to look at alternate information than what their preconceived notions and beliefs are, they tend to be the ones that criticize people like me the most without any facts or knowledge of their own theories that they're standing behind, including globe earth stuff. But I digress, because it's all related and it's all the same people that's lying to us about the same stuff because they think we're morons and that we've all believed in this stuff. And so weather modification, chemtrails, contrails, geoengineering, cloud seeding, this is all stuff that has been done now since the existence, of this earth plane, right? Light in motion, this cosmos, this multidimensional reality. I don't want to plug this book, but I'm reading this book. I'm halfway through it. It's called Hearth. And so far, there are some good diagrams and stuff like that, but I'm already disagreeing with several theories and diagrams in it, and it is what it is. I'm not saying I'm right. It's just the people that are being quoted and referenced as scientific experts from the past are people that are known either not to be real, and or people that were pushing propaganda and psyops, including the heliocentric model that we're seeing and all these other theories that have been continuously debunked, including the Earth curve calculation and models that people like allegedly Pythagoras started, and then people like Copernicus redefined and elaborated on. That's not true, guys. I'm sorry. These guys were paid propagandists as part of groups. They're actors, just like the astronauts that we have nowadays. Actronauts or astronaut. Not. And patents have been put in place for years, and so I'll run this through, and then I'll show you some actual like data that actually backs up this stuff as well. Dutch Sensei talks about this stuff. Eric Dubé, who's also, I don't care what people say about him, he is still a very credible source and puts out incredibly good content. And I would still love to do a friggin' interview with him and talk to him about a lot of stuff because he is a friggin' genius. And people are annoying me with like these. I mean, they're not really annoying me. Like I'm used to it, but I do recommend his books and like documentaries that he's put together as well. And then people that haven't even looked at his content at all, they are dismissing his work and saying like, "Oh, Eric Dubé, like you lost all credibility with that." I'm like, "Are you mad? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, again, people that don't even know their own model at all that are talking the loudest, right? So like, there's people in my family, like I said as well, that they're brilliant people. They're just not interested, and they're just focused on their own friggin' stuff, and that's fair. I'm not pushing this stuff on them, all right? But the people that are the loudest are the ones that are being rude, but are not like, if you ask them like any question like, how fast is it spinning? Is there a difference between the speed at the equator or the poles? No idea. What's the distance between the moon and Earth, like allegedly, or the sun and the Earth? And like, can you explain Coriolis effect? Can you explain corpuscular rays? Can you explain what you think gravity is? Have no idea, no friggin' idea. And then it's like insult. Okay, but I'm not insulting you. I'm just asking you questions about the model that you seem to know so much about and that you're willing to refute and argue about, even though I'm not even arguing. I'm just giving you facts. right? It just it is what it is. I'm going on these tangents, but it's the same thing with the weather modification stuff. People are convinced it's not happening, and when I'm even saying that, there's like there's video and footage and old films from even decades ago that people are getting hired to edit and alter to make it look like there's literally these freaking cloud formations that were in Disney movies. So this has always been here. No. And I do have friends that are in government or work with government as well that have put together access to information requests regarding different elements and minerals and toxins and chemicals that have been dispersed in the atmosphere by DND, Canadian Armed Forces, and how much per month is dispersed, and the quantities, like the list of what it is that's being dispersed, and how much money, and because these are things that are impacting our health and impacting the seasons and the clouds and the temperature. And people like Elon Musk are talking about carbon and still calling it a fossil fuel. It's not a fossil fuel, but we do need to address how we're using energy. I've talked about this for years. Like, there's so many different ways to like utilize free energy and harness solar and lunar energy, but also from the atmosphere, from the ether. There's ways that even John Searle with the levity discs, like there's like ways to like use electrostatics and electromagnetism, and using the atmosphere, and even taking the water, like the oxygen, like the water molecules out of the atmosphere, and getting and actually making water and fuel sources and energy sources. And so these are all things that are untapped, and or people that have put these patents together. They've mysteriously died. Even that top shooting that happened, there was a guy that had put together, I'm forgetting his name now, but I've talked about him before, at Tops of Buffalo, and Gematria News, Matt Hubbard, he's talked about that as well. But he put together like a patent about like utilizing water to fuel vehicles, and he even put together a friggin' like system that worked in a vehicle. And then what happened? There was that shooting. All just interesting things. And I don't believe in coincidences at this stage of my life anymore. And so we need to address things, but with like just pushing the electricity grid with these like lithium friggin' batteries and stuff like that, that is definitely not the answer. What we're doing with friggin' these solar panels, definitely not the answer. With the windmills, no. And we're also impacting whales and whale life. Like, they have lungs. People don't believe this, but every 10 minutes or so, they need to go up to the surface to breathe. And so they're getting pushed further down or further away because of all the friggin' like all the vessels, the ships that are in the ocean and stuff like that, and the explosions and blasting that's being done in certain areas, and dumping. Like, there's just that's such a mess. Like, the people that are in charge right now, these lobbyists and stuff like that they're working with as well, like especially like the oil companies that. And what they're doing is to try to make it look like their carbon footprint is not what's impacting the environment. They're trying to blame it on China, and China is the biggest contributor of pollution, man-made carbon pollution, particularly, but it's also the military, pharmaceutical, industrial complex that's wasting. Okay, how many explosions, how many like vehicles, like in aircrafts have been used, and vehicle transportation of troops and stuff like that. Like, there's so much fuel that's used in war. And carbon emissions in war, again, with like all the friggin' explosions and stuff like that. And people are like not seeing that that's like the very obvious thing. Like, there's the top 10 companies in the world that are causing the most man-made carbon emissions that are impacting the world, and it's wasteful. Anyway, let's get on with Eddie Bravo. If you're listening to this, or Sam Tripoli, like, I would really like it if you guys got me on your show so we could chat as well. Because I'm in Canada, and the algorithms, like, I'm still so freaking censored. And I would travel to the US, obviously. I would go to Texas. I've been to Tennessee. I've always wanted to go to friggin' Texas. I have a friend that's living there. I think he's moving soon, though. He's from Canada. He's not moving back to Canada, but he's going to move to another state, maybe. And so I would travel to Texas, and I would need to bring my dogs, but that's not a big deal. And I would definitely do your show. Tucker Carlson too.
I'd never seen a sky that color.
Jimmy Dore too.
Yellowy, black, greeny, purple. It was uncanny.
Oh, it was a day and a night that we shall never, ever forget.
I couldn't believe that this was happening. First the sky, and then this horrible smell. Really sulphurous.
Thunder and lightning, and oh, it was horrible.
We're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex.
Dangerous chemicals over us from
Is the
planes.
government experimenting with our weather?
That's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called
Chemtrails is
now
a term
getting
referring to the
widespread
visible
attention.
trail left by aircraft
Millions
in
of
the
tons
sky.
of toxic poisons released by our
Confirmed that
planes
during the
as
Cold
part of
War,
the
the
government
United
plot to
States
affect
military
climate change.
conducted
The
secret
government is
tests
up there in airplanes
on
spraying all kinds
unsuspecting
of
people
chemicals to
in cities
change
and
or
Louis.
manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail.
GeoEngineering. They say if it's poison in the
Tests
soil,
show
water,
high levels of these
increases the
chemicals
level
in
of
our
UV
rain
radiation.
and soil.
Using planes to spray chemicals into the
The
atmosphere
heavy
to
metals
manipulate or
reflect the
control
sun's rays
temperature.
through the earth.
And that's why health department records show a sharp increase in barium and aluminum in California's water supply.
We shall propose further cooperative effort between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
The Army's need to know more and more about weather that surrounds this planet is a vital part of the expanded research program of atomic weapons. We all talk about the weather. The Army is doing something about the weather.
And even today, there were the planes out and the friggin' trails in the sky, very obviously around the sun and the moon, because like the sun was rising, crescent moon today, waning crescent, in the morning. And so like during the day, like it would be very obvious like that it would be in and around the sun on its path as well as it's setting in the west southwest more now, again because we're not in the balanced equatorial positions. And they want to hide that. They want to cover it up as well. And so like when you're blocking the sun, you're also blocking the sun's rays, the radiating magnetic rays that heal us, etc. And it's so obvious.
I would like to take you into the laboratory and show you a few of the experiments that led us to our outdoor experiments in converting clouds into snow. Using our home freezing unit, such as this, we can form supercool clouds just like those in the natural atmosphere by taking a tiny piece of dry ice such as this and scratching it so a few tiny fragments fall into the supercool cloud. Long streaks develop. The particles grow very fast. They grow about 1 billion-fold in volume in a few seconds. Many millions of snow crystals form, and we get the same effect as is produced by dry ice. Dry ice is not particularly important as far as the fact that it's CO2. It is primarily important because it's colder than minus 35 degrees centigrade. This is a picture of the first cloud that we seeded back last November. Flying in a small Fairchild plane and putting dry ice from a small dispenser in the bottom of the plane, and within minutes saw long streamers of snow falling from the base of the cloud and evaporating into the drier air below. Under many conditions, of course, full-fledged snowstorms will be produced in this way. Nature at last has permitted to do a little something about the weather.
Using Schaefer-Langmuir techniques, the Army Signal Corps and Office of Naval Research began conducting many of these experiments.
In 1947, Project Cirrus expanded to test cloud seeding on a hurricane traveling eastbound 350 miles off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. They dropped 80 pounds of dry ice into the raging storm, only to realize that the hurricane suddenly changed direction and began traveling back towards the United States. Savannah, Georgia, was hit by record-breaking winds of up to 85 miles per hour. More than 1,500 people were left homeless, and at least 2 people died. Total damage was reported in the millions of dollars, and the project and its participants were blamed for what happened.
On the night of the 15th of August 1952, the worst flood in British history swept through the tiny seaside village of Lynmouth. 90 million tons of water devastated the area, killing 35 people and leaving over 400 homeless. 40,000 tons of boulders were dragged off the moors, destroying houses and cars. Reporters spoke to squadron leader Len Otley. He confirmed that he worked on Project or Operation Cumulus, which was also referred to as Operation Witch Doctor. What's more, in mid-August 1952, Alan Yates, a lecturer at Cranfield School of Aeronautics at the time, was asked to take part in cloud seeding experiments. According to Yates, the artificial rain fell over Lynmouth and washed the village into the sea. Newly declassified documents prove that Project Cumulus was indeed going on the day of the flood that year.
Project Skyfire, a U.S. forestry research operation concerned with the study of lightning and all of its manifestations.
Project Skyfire is aimed at lightning fires in western Florida. In detail, the manner in which your work involves you in the dispersion of clouds, which happen to have some effect on, or rather bring about thunderstorms or what have you. Could you tell our audience something about that type of work? Laurie, we're conducting experiments in cloud seeding aimed at determining whether or not weather modification techniques might possibly prevent lightning fires. We carry this work on by seeding clouds with silver iodide nuclei. We disperse silver iodide from specially developed generators located either on the ground or on aircraft. Our experience has been that we can do the best job through aircraft seeding.
Again, man looks to his own efforts to increase the flow of water. Since the 1946 experiments of Dr. Vincent Schaefer, we have known that some clouds can be modified through seeding to yield additional precipitation. In 1961, Congress directed the Bureau of Reclamation to begin a long-range study of cloud seeding with the aim of eventually augmenting.
From November Bear, good question. Hello as well. I would love to talk with Jaron. So I've been talking with him a little bit on Skype and on social media platform, just trying to line up a time to chat. I'm really, really excited about it because he's brilliant. And I think our focus might be, it's whatever he wants it to be, obviously, and he can ask me whatever questions he wants. And but I think it's going to be focused on like astrotheosophy, like more of the religious stuff too, I believe. And so, I'm hoping soon.
The nation's supply of water. The program, called Project Skywater, continues at many sites throughout the United States. Eventually, if the research program proves successful, the methods learned will become part of our nation's integrated water resources program.
In 1962, during the Vietnam War, American forces responded with Operation Ranch Hand. Over the next 9 years, spraying an area about the size of Massachusetts with defoliants, the most notorious being Agent Orange. Large swaths of Vietnam were left barren.
Enough food to feed 600,000 people for a year has been destroyed.
Despite this sudden devastation, U.S. officials said the spraying created no lasting harm.
Milton Ross, a Special Forces advisor near Pleiku, has a son born without the tips of his fingers.
North Vietnam charged today that defoliants have produced many instances of miscarriages, congenital defects, and monstrosities among children.
The Vietnamese government insisted the cause was Agent Orange.
Although that war was long ago, there is lingering anger about the United States' use of a controversial defoliant spread by American aircraft on the jungles there. An epidemic of birth defects, brain damage, and rare cancers still affecting hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese today.
According to environmental studies, high levels of dioxin could still be found in the soil in certain areas and had seeped into nearby lakes.
Agent Orange was a safe...
Agent Orange was even in Gagetown when I was there training. And there was thermite, based on explosions and high heat temperatures at around 9/11. And it was known that it was a toxic environment as well.
Product when it was used in the Vietnam War, and it's a safe product today.
I I got something to say. I want to know how come the fascist pigs have been seeding the clouds. Right. Last hour, the airplanes going over twice with all the smoke coming out of them seeding the clouds. And I want to know, why that stuff is going down, man. And why doesn't the media report that stuff to the people, man? I'm telling you what happened. The planes come over an hour and a half and they seed all the clouds. People of unknown origin were seeding the clouds over the. I don't know what they hope to prove, man.
Project Storm Fury assembles a team of highly trained scientists and technicians to fly into mature hurricanes.
Scientists working on the project were convinced that they could reduce hurricane devastation using a process called cloud seeding by spraying the thunderclouds inside the hurricane with a chemical called silver iodide. This would become known as the Storm Fury hypothesis.
Yep.
So, the seeding plan.
And that was another request specifically about the silver iodide, the aluminum oxide. I've specifically asked for those as well on a list of requests that I've put in to the government about what they're dispersing in the air.
Fly across the eye and into these clouds, seeding the supercooled water droplets from the belt of maximum winds outwards.
As the silver iodide turns the supercooled water into ice, the heat released during this process causes the seeded clouds to grow and develop into a new outer eye wall. At that time, the United States Army were in Vietnam. Pierre Saint-Amand was part of the team assembled in a top-secret cloud seeding operation known simply as Project Popeye. In May 1967, as monsoon clouds developed over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Armand and his team put their new weapon to the test.
We ejected the material so that it fell into the growing part of the cloud, and it rained very heavily out of it, and everybody was convinced with that one experiment that we had done enough.
Project Popeye had opened the door to a new and dangerous type of warfare.
Some said, if you control the weather, you can control the world. Military planners imagined loading the clouds with radiological, biological, or chemical agents and having them rain on demand.
They could attack your enemy using the weather, but deny ever doing so. Allegations were made that cloud seeding had not only made jungle paths impassable, it had also killed thousands of innocent people. But this didn't stop governments from continuing to explore ways of modifying the weather, sometimes for highly questionable purposes.
And that message calls for new frontiers, new vision. It calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather.
Okay, so there was I just have to bring it up because I'm a little OCD that way. So they mentioned the discussion was just talked about for mosquitoes. So I'm just going to present. People can call this a conspiracy theory. It's fine, but the connection between I just did a simple search: mosquito factories, America, Bill Gates. That was my search because it's something that I'm tracking. There's a World Mosquito Program that Bill Gates, literally the foundation, is part of. I'm not even frigging joking. And so AP, by the way, controlled opposition propaganda, mainstream media is going to lie about stuff. But they do have companies in Florida, in Texas, and in other areas where they're releasing millions of mosquitoes. And they're not even denying it. 168 million to develop. This was 2008. And so, yeah, so they're releasing mosquitoes, also talking about mosquitoes being injected with therapeutics so that when they sting us, we're injected with a therapeutic or giving us meat allergies and other things. And so, like, you can't even make this up, what I just shared. And so I can carry on with this as well. And so they're giving you the solution. It's a Hegelian dialect, the chaos theory. They're giving you the solution, which is killing you slowly, or at least by keeping you perpetually unwell. And but they're also creating everything. It just makes me so friggin' frustrated. Here's just like one thing. No, I am not signing up. China to expand weather modification program to cover area larger than India. That was 4 years ago. And so it's like, not like they're not talking about it. I don't mean to talk so masculine. I'm so sorry. Like my career, my life experiences have made me like a little bit more, I guess, masculine. I don't mean to be. So these are all weather as force multiplier, owning the weather 2025. Like, why is the Air Force? So by Colonel Tamsy J. House, Lieutenant Colonel James B. Neer, 1996. Like why? So when people are saying, like, people are not saying that when you control the weather, you control the world. I mean, yeah, they've been saying it. Like here, like even the American friggin' military is saying it. And something that also why I think I've been very heavily censored within Canada is because like I share this stuff, like I actual show proof and patents put in place too, that even from the early 1900s as well. So method and apparatus for altering a region in the Earth's atmosphere, ionosphere, and or magnetosphere. It is a magnetosphere. Spoiler alert, it's toroidal fields. So the abstract for this patent, take a look, 1985 applications. There's multiple ones in there. I've shared them before. For altering at least one selected region which normally exists above the Earth's surface. The region is excited by electron cyclotron resonance heating to thereby increase its charged particle density. In one embodiment, circularly polarized electromagnetic radiation is transmitted upward in a direction substantially parallel to and along a field line, which is anyway. Technical field to a method and apparatus for altering at least one selected region normally existing above the Earth's surface. Why? And HAARP's involved in this stuff. DARPA is involved in this stuff. There are even platforms that are mobile on the ocean that are causing weather modification events and explosions that are creating EMPs that are causing power outages and storms and hurricanes, and they're not admitting it either. I could share countless, but I'll just carry on with the movie. I'm just I don't know if it's a movie or like more of a documentary thing, but this is to show you that I can reinforce what these people are sharing even in this film that I'm watching with you. I think it was this one.
He who controls the weather will control the world. It lays the steps that's necessary to provide a nuclear rocket that will produce benefits that are so unlimited that I couldn't tell you about them if I had all afternoon.
July 1976. Strange, unexplained blackouts in worldwide communications plague the globe and are covertly transmitting extremely low-frequency waves, otherwise known as ELF waves.
It's called the Russian woodpecker because it was essentially that sort of clicking, pecking sound.
In 1982, a report by Pentagon researcher L. Ponte alleges the Russian woodpecker signal is actually creating layers of artificial ionization in the upper atmosphere, which means it could have been bending the jet stream and altering global wind patterns.
There's been a lot of research in military labs over what you can do with putting radio waves into the atmosphere. Some of the research indicates that one can move the jet stream around and thus induce weather conditions.
It's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas.
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
Of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere. HAARP is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. Working in tandem, these transmitters alter the weather anywhere in the world, potentially changing the jet stream's course entirely. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HAARP sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere. The waves get reflected back down and pass through the Earth and ocean. But HAARP's startling potential doesn't end there. It's linked to a strange phenomena occurring in our skies.
So they're also like with that, like with the frequencies, waves, vibrations, they're moving toxins and chemicals throughout the like the world, the earth, and Canada. Like we're the ones that are mostly impacted, and China and US, like the northern regions. So not even like south, like especially with the southern or central areas of America, like nowhere near, right? So Canada should be more concerned about HAARP than they are, especially people in government that don't know what's going on right now, unfortunately, because they have people in that are puppets that have no clue and they don't care. Oh my God. And they have just enough ego and intelligence to believe that they're right about everything. So they won't even consider looking at alternate information yet. Slowly, I think that it's going to change. I mean, you know, people are having to retire eventually. And so there's so many things that Canada needs to be aware of. So even with, I was talking to a family member about this, but we'll bring this up. A question was asked to me the other day, and let me see if I can find it. We talk a lot, so. So I don't know if you're aware of the Willow Project, but I might share a video on it. Like I shared a video with her that summed it up really nicely. The Willow Project is in Alaska, and it's looking at petroleum resources there, and there's going to be a significant carbon imprint for not for Canada, but we're going to be impacted by it, and our atmosphere is going to be impacted by it. And then like in America, the reason why they're avoiding going with that place at this point is because it's going to obviously increase their carbon imprint significantly, and that's why they like to make other companies do like the refining and stuff like that of the oil drilling for it and such, because then they can blame it on them. Like China is like one of the major contributors of the pollution that we're experiencing in the atmosphere, followed by other countries that are not Canada. We're not even close on the like we're not even top 100. But yeah, so with the Willow Project, I said pros and cons. Fossil fuels are just petroleum and dead tree roots and such. I agree with using oil from your own country more and trying to have as little an impact on the environment as possible. This carbon BS is also largely a hoax. It really is. And the people that are talking the most about the carbon emissions and stuff like that, they're the ones that are supporting and pro all these wars, these pharmaceutical companies that really friggin' use a lot of carbon. Even in their testing, they're using various different components and types of carbon, like graphene, for example, and things like that for these for the products that are used, and with their jet planes and their fuel alone. I gave the breakdown of the equivalent with Taylor Swift, like even in 1 month, she like the carbon emissions that she emits is more than like me in my lifetime for for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And but anyway, and so like the hypocrisy with the people with the yachts and with like the supply ships for their yachts, and like all of that stuff. And we're getting carbon tax because of these people, and that's a hoax, but I'll get into that, because lobbyists also push tax on stuff like this, and that money goes in their pockets, right? It's a scam. And then I was saying things like better than begging Saudi Arabia or China for the oil, and it lessens the chance of a further genocide of Gazans, Palestinians for the oil off their coasts. I'm giving pros and cons because I'm like, even in Canada, we should be like not preventing our oil assets from being utilized. They definitely need to be mitigated, obviously, and like there's free energy sources we're not tapping into. I will reiterate, the atmosphere in itself, there's ways to tap into the ether and even get water out of the friggin' atmosphere, like actually literally in taps, like this is shown in vehicles, biofuel, like there's just so much. And people are saying it's a carbon bomb and stuff like that. Canada will be more impacted, like our environment, by the carbon emissions and fuels and stuff like that. Yeah, and like people that are like doing testing and explosions and stuff like that, like all over the world in the oceans, like don't even friggin' say that farmers are to blame, or like say that carbon tax, like taxing like they like regular citizens is is going to make any difference.
On clear days, you can often see long white lines being traced high in the sky. They are contrails of jet aircraft, actually long, slender clouds. Weathermen are finding them especially fascinating because a theory is being developed that those long white lines may be changing our weather for the better. Yes.
So maybe I forgot to introduce this site. This is the Great Awakening World, Truth and Secrets Revealed. I usually remember to introduce. And this is Frankenskies, GeoEngineering, Chemtrails, Weather Modification, HAARP, Cloud Seeding. And there's some pretty good videos in here as well. I've already liked it, and I'm already following them. And like I've said, there's good videos. Just like this one. Oh, shit.
And over the next 9 years, spraying an area about the size of Massachusetts with defoliants, the most notorious being Agent Orange. Large swaths of Vietnam studies, high levels of dioxin could still be found in the soil in certain areas and had seeped into nearby lakes.
Agent Orange was a safe product when it was used in the Vietnam War, and it's a safe product today.
I got something to say. I want to know how come the fascist pigs have been seeding the clouds. Right. Last hour, the airplanes going over twice with all the smoke coming out of them, seeding the clouds. And I want to know, why that stuff is going down, man. And why doesn't the media report that stuff to the people, man? I'm telling you what happened. The planes come over an hour and a half.
Were made that cloud seeding had not only made jungle paths impossible, it had also killed thousands of innocent people. But this didn't stop governments from continuing to explore ways of modifying the weather, sometimes for highly questionable purposes.
And that message calls for new frontiers, new vision. It calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world. It lays the steps that's necessary to provide a nuclear rocket that will produce benefits that are so unlimited that I couldn't tell you about them if I had all afternoon.
July 1976. Strange, unexplained blackouts in worldwide communications plague the globe and are covertly transmitting extremely low-frequency waves, otherwise known as ELF waves.
It was called the Russian woodpecker because it was essentially that sort of clicking, pecking sound.
In 1982, a report by Pentagon researcher L. Ponte alleges the Russian woodpecker signal is actually creating layers of artificial ionization in the upper atmosphere, which means it could have been bending the jet stream and altering global wind patterns.
There's been a lot of research in military labs over what you can do with putting radio waves into the atmosphere. Some of the research indicates that one can move the jet stream around and thus induce weather conditions.
It's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas.
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
Of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere. HAARP is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. Working in tandem, these transmitters alter the weather anywhere in the world, potentially changing the jet stream's course entirely. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HAARP sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere. The waves get reflected back down and pass through the earth and ocean. But HAARP's startling potential doesn't end there. It's linked to a strange phenomena occurring in our skies.
On clear days, you can often see long white lines being traced high in the sky. They are contrails of jet aircraft, actually long, slender clouds. Weathermen are finding them especially fascinating because a theory is being developed that those long white lines may be changing our weather for the better. Details from Roger O'Neill.
The exhaust from jet engines, usually seen as long, thin trails of white clouds behind high-flying jet airplanes, may be a big reason why there are 30 fewer days of sunshine a year in the Midwest now than there were in 1900. The daily range between high and low temperatures has also narrowed.
In the absence of natural clouds, given the correct atmospheric conditions, jet aircraft in high frequency can almost completely cover the atmosphere with clouds.
No one is trying to make clouds now using jet engines, but this study suggests that jet travel is inadvertently making our days more cloudy. And someday, weather researchers may be able to use jets on purpose to change our weather. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Champaign, Illinois.
And finally, a federal report today predicted possible catastrophic warming of the Earth by the 1990s with the strong climate change.
Hurricane Gloria is moving on the East Coast tonight like a monster out of a science fiction film.
3,000 homes went underwater, and of those, almost 900 were destroyed.
From 1987 through 1992, California experienced the most severe drought in the state's history. According to NOAA, an anomaly occurs in the jet stream. The winds appear to change direction, blowing east to west instead of west to east, indicating the jet stream coming into the west is suddenly much weaker than normal, causing a drought. By 1995, the jet stream returns to normal.
Here, there were huge problems with flooding, intersections and parking lots underwater, homes threatened, people trapped in the river that you see out here behind me, forcing those dramatic rescues.
This U.S. Air Force report graphically outlines the military's desire to exploit and manipulate the weather for the purposes of war by the year 2025. According to one of the most harrowing lines in this report, quote, "Weather modification is a force multiplier with tremendous power that could be exploited across the full spectrum of war-fighting environments."
Man-made global warming is no longer just a theory about climate. It is the defining moral and political cause of our age. It is presented in the media as having the stamp of authority of an impressive international organization,
From the IPCC.
the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC.
I've often heard it said that there is a consensus of thousands of scientists on the global warming issue and that humans are causing a catastrophic change to the climate system. Well, I am one scientist, and there are many that simply think that is not true.
The final conclusions are politically driven.
This claim that the IPCC is the world's top 1,500 or 2,500 scientists, you look at the bibliographies of the people and it's simply not true. There are quite a number of non-scientists.
And to build the number up to 2,500, they have to start taking reviewers and government people and so on, anyone who ever came close to them. And none of them are asked to agree. Many of them disagree.
Those people who are specialists but don't agree with the polemic and resign, there have been a number that I know of, they are simply put on the author list and become part of this 2,500 of the world's top scientists.
People have decided you have to convince other people that since no scientist disagrees, you shouldn't disagree either.
Climate scientists need there to be a problem in order to get funding.
We have a vested interest in creating panic because then money will flow to climate science.
It's become a great industry in itself. And if the whole global warming farrago collapsed, there'd be an awful lot of people out of jobs and looking for work.
There's one thing you shouldn't say, and that is, this might not be a problem.
If you go to page 119 of the president's budget, he's anticipating generating $646 billion in new tax revenue from this bill. So clearly the president expects this bill to generate $646 billion in new taxes that even his own budget director has said would be passed on.
So Matt Landman was brought up, and actually before I get even into Al Gore, oh, he fires me up too. Like, that guy is such a friggin' serial liar, lobbyist, warmonger, like just so friggin' bought, and I just can't. If I could see something, I thought I just pulled something up with him, like another interview that he's done. So this is Geoengineering and Your Health, How 5G and Lines in Our Skies Affect Your Health with Matt Landman. And so, yeah, this would be a good one to watch as well. I absolutely agree with that comment. Definitely take a look at his work. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget. Because Because it's a fact.
On to consumers. You must have been listening to our testimony that we've had for the last few days with dozens of experts that have come in who have given completely different views.
Well, I
would encourage you to go back and look at the testimony this committee's heard. We're talking about that can export millions of jobs out of our economy, out of our country, and testimony's been given just to those numbers. And so we're talking about a serious consequence that there would be on this country. The carbon would be emitted, but it would be emitted in China and India, and the jobs would go to China and India. Do you want to
man-made global warming pollution causes global warming.
It's my understanding that back in 1997, when you were vice president, Enron's CEO, Ken Lay, was involved in discussions with you at the White House about helping develop this type of policy, this trading scheme. And is that accurate? Is it inaccurate? It's been reported.
Money scheme.
I don't know, but I met with Ken Lay, as lots of people did, before anybody knew that he was a crook.
And clearly you can see why so many of us are concerned about turning over this country's energy
I didn't know him well enough to call him Kenny Boy.
You knew him well enough to help devise this trading scheme, and obviously we know what Enron and these big guys on Wall Street like Goldman Sachs, and I know you've got interest with Goldman Sachs.
No.
These people, well, that's been reported. Is that not accurate?
No, I wish I did.
I'm saying that there are going to be big winners and big losers in this bill. And I think that should be noted, that companies like Enron helped come up with this trading scheme that would
Enron.
I don't know if this is true or not, that some scientists are trying to figure out a way to block the sun to try to slow down global warming.
Yeah, it's a measure of the feeling of desperation that some of them feel.
Are they really thinking they could do that?
Well, some of them are seriously proposing, and I think it's completely nuts.
Yeah.
You put another kind of pollution, sulfur dioxide, up to orbit, cover the atmosphere. The sky won't be really blue in the way it is now anymore, but it would block out some of the sun's heat so that we wouldn't have to take the difficult steps to stop spewing all this global warming pollution into the atmosphere. And of course, there are a lot of problems with what they're proposing.
You could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a kind of ugly tech fix.
You can spray something into the
These
atmosphere.
are the experts they're sharing this.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
How do you do this?
These are the experts. And ladies and gentlemen, Gore's written books. John Kerry's written books. They have continuously been proven wrong, completely incorrect, and called out for it. And yet, they've made so much friggin' money out. You can't even make this up.
Start with a fleet of modified business jets and say 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year. And each year you have to put a little more. And this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in
No,
emissions.
we'll get to it eventually. But in the meantime, we're shrouding the earth in sulfuric acid.
So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid.
We put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, but it'll be better if we put more in.
We're talking about 1% of that.
1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down, but it's a tiny addition to what we're already doing.
Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the end?
It actually turns out to be an old idea. This was known since President Johnson.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them. Maybe all those planes are the contrails. Maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now, and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
Seems extremely unlikely.
That the United States is not telling something to its citizens? That seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper. I think they might have your idea already.
This geoengineering idea in its simplest form is basically the following. You could put fine particles, say sulfuric acid particles, sulfates, into the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere, where they'd reflect away sunlight and cool the planet. There's lots of mystery in the details, and there's some bad side effects, like it partially destroys the ozone layer, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it clearly cools down. And one other thing, it's fast. I guess the thing I haven't said about this is it is absurdly cheap. It's amazing how we can affect the planet. The one thing about this is it gives us extraordinary leverage. This improved science and engineering will, whether we like it or not, give us more and more leverage to affect the planet, to control the planet, to give us weather and climate control, not because we plan it, not because we want it, just because science delivers it to us bit by bit.
What is geoengineering?
It's really two very different things. One is ways that we would alter the amount of sunlight the Earth absorbs,
Like he's a
and so
sociopath.
cool the planet, partly offsetting the effects of carbon in the atmosphere, and that's called solar radiation management, or in some technocratic way, SRM. And the other one is to take carbon out of the atmosphere, so-called carbon dioxide removal.
Before we get on to solar radiation management, let me ask you about the carbon dioxide removal. A Royal Society report here in the United Kingdom back in 2009 said that no method of carbon dioxide removal has yet been demonstrated to be effective at an affordable cost, with except.
Oh, let me think. Oh my God! Like what? Let me think of maybe planting trees. Maybe planting trees. Maybe planting more plants. Maybe stopping the shredding the millions of trees in the friggin' province of Ontario alone in the last couple of years alone. Okay, leave things alone. Maybe unfuck the toxic waste drums that are seeping these toxic wastes in the ocean, and also impacting a lot of the like the plant life and stuff like that within the ocean. So when they're talking about pollution and stuff, like these are like man-made problems for sure, but it's the friggin' the top 10 corporations, companies are the biggest contributors to this. Like I can't even explain this enough. And Bill Gates talking about trees not being environmentally friendly, and that they're like they're nonsensical and all this other stuff. Like what good are trees? Like this, there's so much that trees are needed for, like especially also for petroleum, for fuels as well. The electromagnetic fields that they create, they literally regulate the cycles, like in the environment. They create ecosystems and life and clouds and rain and stuff like that as well. And like depending on the area, snow. Like like this guy, man, these people. So that's what you can do to assist with the carbon stuff. Like that's just one easy option.
Acceptable environmental impacts, and they only work to reduce temperatures over very long timescales.
I think that's exactly right. And I can say that both as an author of that report and as somebody running a startup company trying to capture CO2 from the air.
Before we get into the pros and cons of it, how solar radiation management might work.
Conceptually, it's simple. The doing it is not the hard part, but you could use aircraft or other methods to deliver literally tons or millions of tons of very small reflective aerosols, tiny particles, say to the upper atmosphere.
Spraying them out at a high altitude.
Correct.
Isn't one of the problems with the climate and studying the climate is that it's incredibly difficult to know exactly how it works. It is very difficult to model.
Sure, it's impossible to know exactly, but you can still learn a lot. So we actually ran a survey almost a year ago now that took data, high quality data from 1,000 people in the UK, Canada, and the US to try and understand public support for research on these technologies, and what kind of political leanings influence people's decision to be for or against. And in fact, we found pretty broad support for research.
But that particular opinion survey that you're talking about, it also came up with the finding that 64% of subjects agree that humans should not be manipulating nature in the way suggested by solar radiation management.
Exactly.
Well, that would suggest that there isn't particularly broad support at the moment for the theory behind this.
There's not broad support for doing it, and I think that's quite a healthy thing. I mean, I'm one of the people who, maybe starting 20 years ago, most helped to open the door to get public conversation going on this thing.
How do you think, in that case, the public can be convinced, given that there is, as we saw with this project in Britain, tremendous skepticism, even about research at what you say is a very, very benign level?
Public opinion will evolve over a long time, and from my point of view, the goal is to try and make that public opinion be able to be shaped by facts as well as possible, and also shaped by people's values. It's not to promote this. So actually,
well, it is in part to promote this. I mean, you're a great enthusiast for this, and as you said, you have your own private company, which is.
At my private company, we're focused on a very different part of it, which doesn't suffer from these governance challenges.
But it is all to do with the issue of geoengineering. I mean, it's an incredibly sensitive topic.
I actually don't think my job is promoting. My job is to help clear thinking and clear knowledge about the tools we have to regulate climate risk, among them this one. And I'm perfectly prepared to find that results show that we should never do this. So if it works, and again, we don't know it does, it provides some protection in the near term.
Isn't there a problem, though, that you could end up with different effects in different parts of the world? I mean, you could, for example, find that although you're reducing the amount of sunlight and the amount, therefore, that the Earth is warming up, rainfall is affected in different ways in different parts of the world.
Absolutely. Essentially, the scientists and technocrats, including myself, I guess, are helping to invent a thermostat knob. But it's much easier to invent the knob than to figure out who should be in charge of it in a world with many states.
No, indeed, and I want to come on to the governance, but I want to ask specifically about the science of this, which is how far can you tell whether the effects of cellular radiation management are then going to cause perhaps a catastrophic loss of rainfall in a certain part of the world? At the moment, it seems to be hazy, this.
I think it's not as hazy as that. So using exactly the same climate models as we've used to estimate the problems with CO2 in the atmosphere, the underlying climate problem, we've applied those same models and same techniques to look at this. And the results so far, I have to say, look pretty good. That's why we're paying any attention to it.
Richard Branson himself, who owns the Virgin Airline Group, was quoted back in 2009 in the New York Times saying, if we could come up with a geoengineering answer to this problem, we could carry on flying our planes and driving our cars.
It's going to cost a lot of money.
And yet you're, I mean, let's be clear here, you and your company are after Branson's money.
The cheapest thing to do.
And the thing is, I don't buy their bullshit that they're looking for these free energy things like Elon Musk and these people, because they know about this stuff. I've shared the models and examples on my page. Countless, thousands of other people have as well. And there's been patents out there repeatedly. I know people personally that have put together free energy designs, systems, engines, and alternate fuel sources, and it goes nowhere. And even within the universities, the education systems, it's not just the heliocentric model that's being pushed that is incorrect, but even with my cognitive science degree, another degree, I have a political science degree, multiple minors that are more along the STEM courses, and I have multiple certifications and being autodidactic, and I've read thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of books at this point, and journals and publications and stuff. And I don't even know where I was going with this. Sometimes I go on all these freaking tangents and I forget where I left off.
Use the atmosphere as a waste dump, and if we want to stop doing that, we must have laws that restrict.
Oh yeah, I put on hold because even in my you also have to take not just like neuroscience and cognitive science courses and stats, mathematics, all of that stuff, but you also have to take advanced psychology courses as well as part of that degree for cognitive sciences, and linguistics, psycholinguistics, as well. I was taking, but I was refusing to use pronouns, and even science professors, because it was a science degree, not an arts degree. They were also adopting the pronoun things, and I'm no, in a science course, absolutely, we should not be enabling this, right? Especially psycholinguistics, and I even wrote the professor. I also mentioned the 87 plus whatever pronouns that the attempt to be indoctrinated into the English language. I was even saying not only would it not be able to be universally adopted, so there would be multiple different variations of the English language, because no one in Europe was gonna that is English speaking, and no one in Russia for any of the English languages that they teach, or China, I'm assuming, would be with all of these pronouns, right? The Z, zer, they, them, which is they're already words. They already mean something else, it is what it is. And so that also put my degree on hold in my fourth year of my cognitive science degree at Carleton University. And even as a facilitator at Discovery University for as a volunteer, for the homeless to build up their resumes. I was even teaching what their professors were teaching at Ottawa University was, again, more of this woke push, and it was in all departments, including the STEM departments. And this is incorrect. And when doctors are learning there's more than two genders, or biological sexes, whatever you want to call it, and also pushing this woke narrative, it's concerning, right? So they're not. There's no science to be trusted there. There's no science being applied or being taught. And it's because these organizations that won't get funding by Soros and the Schwabs and the Hararis and these people, Bill and Melinda Gates people, and they're not getting funding or donations when they're teaching more what they should be teaching. Especially people that align with the World Economic Forum, unfortunately.
The ability to use the atmosphere as a waste dump.
My question is, are you not concerned that you and your company, Carbon Engineering, is looking for money from people like Richard Branson? It's funded, I think, in part by Murray Edwards, who is a key figure in tar sands, which is seen as one of the dirtiest fuels on the planet.
It is.
Are you not slightly concerned about the people who you're getting into bed with?
I'm happy to take money from serious folks who have a broad set of interests. No problem. First of all, I should say, for work on SRM, on these very high leverage technologies that have security concerns, I believe there should be no private action. There should be no for-profit action. I believe it would make sense for SRM to actually restrict or eliminate the possibility of patenting.
Isn't your company involved in several patents at the moment?
This is the difference. So for capturing CO2 from the air, that's an encapsulated small technology, which can be regulated by the normal laws. It's inherently expensive, so there's no risk of sucking all the CO2 out of the air because it costs so much. Any technology you have that removes CO2 will have local risks, maybe unacceptable risks, but those risks can be managed by the normal local risk management we have. So I think that I'm happy to see private action on cutting emissions by making solar power or electric vehicles or capture from air. I'm not happy to see public action on technologies with this huge leverage, like putting particles in the stratosphere.
I'll tell you a little bit about some new work we've been doing, thinking about how you actually might put aerosols in the stratosphere. The novel method we've been thinking about, or it's not novel at all, it's actually exactly what happens from aircraft contrails, is that we put a condensable, a few megatons a year of sulfur would be enough to produce sort of 4 watts per square meter radiative forcing directly out of the back of an aircraft.
So the one interesting thing for carbon capture that I've talked about as well, another solution is you can actually create methane. So if you're able to even capture like methane even from like other things like farts from cows, whatever you want to call it, even though again like they're not the issue with the world or the global warming. Like cows are also like a very effective solution to the friggin' problems we're seeing, right? Like they duplicate themselves. Like they also assist with like keeping like the cycle of life and nature going. Like they're not fake, like the plastics and chemicals and toxins used and all these products that people are eating and thinking that like cereal is is the answer. You can make methane from CO2 and copper-based catalysts efficiently turn carbon dioxide into methane. So there's things out there that we can do, and that's why I was saying I would love to talk to people like Elon Musk about this stuff, because I mean, if he still wants to be a billionaire and these companies that he's afraid of going under, like he thinks it's going to destroy like people's livelihoods, like there's ways that you can replace your company's money-making capabilities by doing the things that like with the carbon stuff, with the methane, with the graphite, with the graphene, as a hybrid also, or another alternative solution to the electrical stuff, like with Tesla and and with SpaceX, like cut your losses, I guess. No, I don't know. No, I mean there's still exploration and stuff like that needs to be done, and infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt. And so if he was like along those lines, of assisting with that, then there's money in that as well. And finding ways of sustaining life in more austere, remote locations within the world, and benefiting from that stuff.
There's a huge literature in the nanofabrication world about making fine particles from low vapor pressure gas. And there's nothing very hard in terms of aircraft engineering. If you go to aircraft engineers and we've done this, they say that would be easy. We could do this if you want us to. We've mostly thought about sulfur, and there's a lot of good reasons to think about sulfur, because sulfur's what nature does, at least in this version of the model. Is if you put sulfur in continuously, you actually get a remarkably ineffective result. Nevertheless, there might be some good reasons to think about alumina. The big deal really is that alumina has 4 times the volumetric rate as sulfur, but roughly 16 times less the coagulation rate. So you could get away, we think, with much smaller mass flow. The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make high quality alumina particles just by spraying alumina vapor out, which oxidizes. So it certainly seems pretty cost effective and easy to do this with aircraft that are not very different from conventional aircraft. High class business jets like the Gulfstream have wing designs that are very efficient. So with slightly different engine choices, they can easily deliver large weights up to sort of 20 kilometers or a little higher. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. We have engineering firms that can do it. So you go to an engineering firm and you want this done. They don't say this is hard or unusual. They say, okay, yes, we could do it. Once you realize you can make things by direct condensation from vapor, then all sorts of different compounds are possible. But it's much, much harder to actually figure out the environmental risks and effectiveness of these new methods than it is to cook them up. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. So the key factors are this is fast, it's cheap, and it's inherently imperfect. It cannot compensate for the amount of CO2 in the air. On a commercial basis, I do absolutely no proprietary commercial work on solar radiation management because I think such work would be wrong.
Solar geoengineering refers to a set of technologies that could allow humanity to deliberately increase the planet's reflectivity, and so partially offsetting the temperature changes and other climate changes that come from the accumulation of carbon dioxide. Solar geoengineering can be very inexpensive. The cost might be something like $10 billion for the whole planet. That sounds like a lot of money each year, but in fact, that's something like 1/10,000th of global GDP.
This next story is so unbelievable, we didn't think it could possibly be true. But after receiving thousands of records and declassified reports from the Army, it's confirmed that during the Cold War, the United States military conducted secret tests on unsuspecting people in the city of St. Louis.
Lisa Martino Taylor's life work has been to uncover details of the Army's ultra-secret military experiments carried out in St. Louis and other cities during the 1950s and 60s.
This study was secretive for a reason. They didn't have volunteers stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll breathe zinc cadmium sulfide with radioactive particles.
These Army archive pictures show how the tests were done in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1960s. In Texas, planes were used to drop the chemical, but in St. Louis, the Army placed chemical sprayers on buildings and station wagons. City officials were kept in the dark about the tests. The Cold War cover story was that the Army was testing smoke screens to protect cities from a Russian attack.
Clearly, they went to great lengths to deceive people.
By making hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests, she uncovered once classified documents that confirmed the spraying of zinc cadmium sulfide. The greatest concentration of this compound was sprayed near the Pruitt-Igoe housing complex just south of downtown St. Louis. It was home to 10,000 low-income people, and an estimated 70% were under the age of 12. Martino Taylor claims they all unknowingly inhaled this compound morning, noon, and night, so the government could measure its effects on their lungs.
So this was in violation of all medical ethics, all international codes, and the military's own policy at that time.
And Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez has once again accused the United States of playing God. This time it's Haiti's disastrous earthquake that he thinks the U.S. was behind. Spanish newspaper ABC quotes Chavez as saying that the U.S. Navy launched a weapon capable of inducing a powerful earthquake off the shore of Haiti. He adds that this time it was only a drill, and the final target is destroying and taking over Iran.
A wild accusation from Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. He says Western countries are causing drought in certain parts of the world, including Iran. He says they're using high-tech equipment to drain raindrops from clouds. He basically says European countries are stealing rain from Iran for their own use.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds.
I think that's Michio Kaku. I've shared this before. Like, again, this is like over a decade ago. And he says a lot of accurate information, but he also hides and implants seeds of lies and deceit in his messaging.
These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, bringing down rain and even lightning. I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now? Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War. Governments have been playing with this thing. Alleged to. Alleged to, right. Yeah. Now,
We realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. They precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam. The bad news is, if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all, because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Terrorists no longer the CIA's only priority. The U.S. intel agency now investing in weather?
Well, they're looking into something called climate engineering or geoengineering, which is a way to manipulate the climate to mitigate the effects of global warming. And they think that maybe this might pose a national security threat in the form of exacerbating water shortages or causing more regional instability in places like Darfur or in India-Pakistan region, in the Kashmir region. So they want to find ways of mitigating climate change, and they're investigating, are there possible ways of doing that? Scientists have been researching this have been thinking about this for quite some time. There are two general ways of engineering the climate. One is called solar radiation management, which is putting particles into the atmosphere. So like if you think of a volcano explodes and it releases particles and that cools down the planet. So that's one way. You can put a balloon up in the atmosphere and spray particles. And then another way would be to possibly bring down carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere in a process called carbon capture and storage. They're basically funding research by the National Academy of Sciences.
Okay, so the CIA is not trying to control the weather. We've tried that before and it doesn't really work, but they're trying to impact climate change.
They want to have a lot of tools in the arsenal in case climate change is as bad as some scientists believe it is. They want to have a way of mitigating it.
You told one of our producers at this point it's pretty doubtful this is a viable terror threat right now.
I don't see I don't see the CIA. I don't think that it's going to be an immediate threat. It's definitely something that's going to be a long-term, decades down the line sort of thing.
Well, there you go.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. Now, I could go on and on and on and on about the things that fascinate me, but rather than talk about them, I thought I'd stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HAARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. But that work has been completed. The Air Force has maintained the site for other government agencies to use for several years now. And with DARPA completing their project, that's our last government customer that we have in the site. We have put out a call for other agencies that had interest in managing the site or taking it over, and including going out to academia.
International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Programs are impacting microclimates needed for our crops to survive and needed for pollination. The other issue is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather an undefined term at this period of time. And so what happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere in what they call geoengineering schemes to reduce, supposedly, global warming. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production, not only here in the United States, but worldwide. What you're seeing now, a lot of times, many scientists know, especially at NASA and in other areas, that the skies that we're seeing are not normal cloud formations. These are man-made. In California, the State Department of Health drinking water tests were examined between 1970 and this year, and we found unusual spiking in barium, aluminum, strontium, manganese, and all of these spiked at the same time in various drinking water supplies across the state of California and also in Arizona. So what's happening with these atmospheric tests is that aluminum, as one example, gets into the root systems of our trees, and it looks like the trees are dying of drought, but they're not. Many of our forests in Redding, California, and other areas are dying from warmer temperatures produced by persistent jet contrails, also impacting tree health and crop health. They know from scientific studies back in the 1970s that they deplete beneficial ozone in the atmosphere by releasing nitric acid.
The death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States, in England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Europe, and I have personally seen them not only in the United States, but in Mexico and Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that's doing this must be stopped. I personally have observed the planes in Lincoln, Nebraska, at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They're huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. Crime against humanity, crime against America, crime against the citizens of this great country. What is wrong with Congress? This has an effect on their population and their people and their friends and their relatives and themselves. What's wrong with the pilots who are flying these airplanes? They're dumping this crap, this poison, on their own families. Somebody in Congress has to step forward and stop it now. Thank you. I'm Ted Gunderson.
I conducted air sampling. I conducted soil sampling, and I was getting high levels of these contaminants. When I started asking the question again under a new commander, I never in my life thought I would have somebody look me in the face and tell me, is there something wrong with you? You've been looking really depressed lately. You know, I can put you under a mental evaluation for up to 120 days. Who would take care of your daughter? Because I was divorced at the time. As soon as I heard that, I knew. It validated everything I ever thought. And I thought, I've spent 9 years of my life trying to protect human health. And here we are violating law after law after law. Just sitting here, instead of protecting the people, we are poisoning the people. And you ask yourself, if this is true and we are spraying the people, where are the pilots? Where are the people? I don't know if you pay attention, but look at Snowden. Look at Manning. People don't come forward because these supposed Whistleblower Act protections that you have are not enforced, they're not supported, and they really don't exist. Geoengineering is occurring, it's been occurring, it is not new, and your tax dollars are funding this. So it is unethical every day for all the other people that are out there that work in preventive health, or even physicians that aren't speaking about this. They need to. The biggest hurdle that we have is disinformation sites. I never say them, but I'm going to today, so that you know if anyone ever gives these to you as a reference to debunk you, it's Metabunk and Contrail Science. Those are two websites that are ran by a government shill named Mick West. He is a computer gaming programmer who tries to tell you about persistent contrails. So somebody who isn't even credentialed in chemistry or physics or ecology, none of that, is trying to tell you that you're crazy. You have to understand that I have met people who used to be purposeful disinformation trolls, as we call them. These people are paid to get you on board to believe a website or an article. So I just want everyone to know and understand that of all things, of all the freedoms that we are losing, geoengineering is the #1 issue that we are facing. Because you can have guns and money and you can have everything. If you don't have food and water and you are dying of respiratory or neurological illnesses, what does it matter? So you've heard about vaccines and you'll hear, about smart meters and you'll hear about other issues. These are all systemic effects. We are getting overexposed to toxins People will tell you fluoride's in the water, but it's not a lot. It is a lot because you're getting it everywhere in your food, water that you drink, and you're getting it in your vaccines. Our bodies cannot metabolize these toxins.
Aluminum as well.
There's the debate.
And I'm just look, I'll even stop it there just for a little bit, just to give you more of more scientific literature, because everyone's just like, oh well, it's just like you need the friggin' science. Okay, first of all, you can do the science yourself. You can search. I'm not stopping you. Aluminum is frequently accessible to so toxicosis, a review of toxic actions and effects. Intake of aluminum is by inhalation of aerosols or particles, ingestion of food, water, and medicament, en français, but it's medications, skin contact, so again, like through the air, vaccination, also with aluminum, dialysis and infusions, etc. Like food is already mentioned. So toxic action toxic actions of aluminum induce oxidative stress, immunologic alterations, genotoxicity, pro-inflammatory effect, peptide denaturation or transformation, enzymatic dysfunction, metabolic derangement, amyloid genesis, membrane perturbation, ion dihomeostasis, apoptosis, necrosis. Like that doesn't sound healthy. And dysplasia. The pathological conditions associated with aluminum toxicosis are disquamative interstitial. I don't even know how to freaking pronounce all this. Anyways, pneumonia. So interesting. Pulmonary alveolar proteinosis, granulomas, granulomatosis, and fibrosis, toxic myocarditis, thrombosis. So also things that are being also attributed to vaccines. Absolutely. Okay, because of like the heavy metal contents and other things as well. Possibly, but also because of the friggin' aluminum oxide in the friggin' like in the sky that's been for generations, and they're also putting in the silver iodide and other heavy metals, other chemicals, and they're even using friggin' chemical sprays to cover up aircrafts, okay, to trick radar systems. I've shared this information as well. Like I'm not like you guys gotta research this stuff as well. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. You know. It's people just need to politely decline these, you know, from like the dentist office and dentist offices as well. I'm not saying that dentist is. I'm not saying they're evil people at all, but there's a lot of money being made off of fluoride, right? Like, especially for the teeth cleanings, like the polish and the fluoride. These are things that are like separate fees, costs associated with them. And so I always say that I don't want the fluoride, which makes my teeth cleaning less expensive. There's a plus to that, but there's also like, again, like I'm like also mitigating the neurotoxins. I also filter my water. I'm on a well now, and again, when I see that there's friggin' like chem and contrails in the skies, even the contrails that they're saying are safe, they're not. It's seeping into the soil, like it with like the rain when people collect rainwater now. Like it's it's just people are making a lot of money off this. Oh yeah, I'm having no doubt. Yeah. All true. And even like with mosquito transmission and food transmission, like it's just like it would just be nice if we had a grip on it. I don't know what else to say about it. Let's get a grip.
Is it a condensation trail or a chemical trail? Something with an additive in it. And I couldn't bite the chemical trail issue for a long time. Give me a reason. Give me a motive. And so I started time-lapsing the sky. And there was this one day where I saw a series of planes go by, but one trail persisted and the others didn't. And as that trail slowly faded away, two other planes came along. One hit the exact end of it, and another went through the middle. How could these planes be aware of, or better yet, even be remotely concerned with what's going on with the debris from another plane? And as I time-lapsed the sky more and more and more, and in higher and higher resolution as the technology improved, was a godsend, because you could see even the little planes were part of the bigger program. So they had to be at a precise place at an exact time to reveal a disturbance in a trail that may have only been in the sky 10 seconds.
It went beyond correlation.
We're dealing with a massive, massive ballet in the sky.
Yeah.
We've got a program that is loose on the planet and is this guise of climate change, but it is this program we're seeing at work. As I became more aware of technologies, I looked at these clouds, at these patterns with different eyes, with a different understanding. And what I've learned is that these chemtrails help the technology align these patterns, align these vibrational structures which direct our weather today.
When I found out about this first, I couldn't believe that I had never seen it before, because I'm from County Wexford, which is known as the sunny southeast in Ireland, and we have always boasted the highest sunshine hours in the country, and we are also underneath one of the busiest air corridors in the world. When I started to find out about chemtrails, I started to look up, and I realized that, yeah, these trails do linger all day, and they go horizon to horizon, and you look to your old photographs and you don't see these kind of trails. So I suppose when the penny dropped was when I saw what in the world are they spraying. That's really when this whole thing kind of made sense to me, because it was explained in a documentary. People knew what they were talking about, and this made a lot of sense. You know, this is a government program to control the weather, and if you think about it, if you want to dominate and control the planet, this is the ultimate weapon to do that. So the Irish media now are normalizing weaponized air as a reality that we must get used to. They're blaming car emissions and coal pollution, but there's no mention of the elephant in the room, the hundreds of millions of tons of substances being sprayed into our atmosphere every year, like aluminium oxide, which David Keith and other geoengineering proponents are proposing spraying into our skies. They will never admit these programs are going on, but we know they are going on because 2004, the Civil Aviation Authority in the UK conducted an investigation into cabin air quality, and one of the peak materials found was aluminium. So what the hell is aluminium doing floating around up at cruising altitude? So now Monsanto miraculously have an aluminium resistant seed that can grow in aluminium contaminated soil. Why would they have such a thing unless they knew of a problem that was down the line or already happening? Last year in 2015, a study came out of Keele University in the UK, and bees were found to have had massive high quantities of aluminium in their brains. This is a big problem. We need bees to keep the food chain sustained and to keep it alive. And now Monsanto have recently bought a bee research company called Biologics in 2012. And they have genetically modified a bee that can only pollinate Monsanto crops. And also, this bee is...
So that's crazy. But also, fun fact, because I'm a little ADHD, the beehive cluster is in the sign of Cancer, which is where the sun is at the highest point in the sky. On or around the 20th or 21st of June every single year, and the shape of that is the pentagram, and it is like the most sacred shape possibly, or one of the most sacred shapes, and also one of like the most efficient shapes that you can make for structure wise, that has like the most amount of its space like utilized efficiently and effectively, and just all interesting things.
Resistant to all pesticides. So why would they want to design such a Frankenstein creation unless they knew of a problem that already existed or a problem that was in the pipeline? Dementia now is the biggest killer in women in the UK. And what's the main cause of dementia? Aluminium accumulation in the brain cells. We are in the fight of our lives. All sources needed for life to exist are under direct attack from these programs. Oxygen, sunlight, and water. Once you know about this, you have a duty of care to get involved. As a caretaker of this planet, we must all come together to stop these programs, because we can do it. But once you find out this is going on, you understand that the air you breathe is being compromised. Things don't get any worse than that. You're standing at the end of the plank. What else do? You got to take action. Otherwise, you are condoning what's going on. Silence is compliance. So we got to speak out.
We spend a lot of time outside looking up at the sky, and not a lot of people do that anymore. March 14th, 2014, in Eureka, California, I was driving the vehicle with my two kids, and we were watching this chemtrail for about maybe like 5 minutes it had been going. And I noticed that there was this large flash that lit up the entire sky, similar to what lightning would do. So we're driving towards the sunset, and the drone was coming this way, and it came over, and about there that's when we saw the light, and then it went straight down from that angle. The difference that I'm finding when I see a drone spraying compared to an airplane spraying is when the drone sprays, it seems that it's more of an upward angle from the ground to the sky, as if it was launched from right below where it was. And with the plane sprayers, it seems like they go from one side of the horizon to the other side. The reason that the people probably stand on the sidelines is because, you know, they don't really want to stand out. And I don't mind standing out. That's part of my personality since forever. So, you know, everybody's in their car looking down, watching the news. I'm outside looking up. I've become aware, and it seems to me like more people need to be aware or should want to be aware.
My name's Jack Falsrock, and I'm Maja Maui. I grew up on the east side of Mount Shasta. We went out and hunted and gathered all of our food all the time. That's when I first started noticing that something was wrong with the earth. Then I started seeing things in the sky that was not supposed to be there. And then I seen that what caused those things was the planes that was flying over, and they were polluting the sky. And I was wondering why don't they care about the sky? What I noticed, you know, is this really strange weather. You know, it really disrupts everything. You know, I noticed that too. You know, how when it gets cold sometimes, and then it gets hot, and then it gets cold and it gets hot. You know, it disrupts this environment here. You know, I mean, anybody that understands when they grow things, you know, they know that the weather can't change like that. You don't have to be a scientist to understand that. And when you disrupt that, when you keep putting these clouds in between the earth and the moon, you're going to disrupt the whole world. You're going to disrupt man. You're going to disrupt all these animals. That's why it's not good to change the weather. The weather's how it's supposed to be. It's like what they're spraying over there with the mosquitoes. They say those things so they can scare people, so they can continue doing that.
Yep.
And then that's all they do is scare these people so they can, oh, we got to do this, we got to do this.
Yeah, no, you don't.
There's nothing to be afraid of. Yeah. Everything
It's
was created beautiful. Are you not happy? You know, go some other earth. Go over there. You know, get on your plane and go somewhere else. You know?
Like New York City, they're spraying the streets and they're saying, "Go get in your house." Like the people don't want it. It's just a disaster.
They stop spraying the chemicals. We can heal. We will heal ourselves just like the earth will heal. If they stop those, if they stop the chemicals before it's too late, and people really begin to understand, you know, really understand. I know that people accept the sky the way it is now because they're so used to it, and it's really sad. We should stop using all the chemicals that we use, and trying to control the things that we shouldn't even control. Quit using the chemicals. Quit using the chemicals in the sky. You're going to wake up one morning and you can't breathe, then what are you going to do?
We have freedom of information in both British Columbia and Canada. So I first inquired from the province because I was relatively close to the people there. So I thought I could probably find out more from it than I might from Canada. However, I did get a quick response from the province saying basically they knew nothing about it and they couldn't help me. It took a long time for me to get a response from the federal government. I requested the information through the Freedom of Information legislation in about 2013, I think it was. And it was 2014 in March when I finally got a response. I got 47 pages, of which 10 were blanked out completely. And 6 or 8 had comments, this information cannot be provided for you under section whatever of the Freedom of Information Act. So I didn't get all the information. There's a lot out there that they haven't told us. But they told me enough that it basically confirmed for me and for all of those that the report was provided to that, yes, it was happening. And I think there needs to be more an awareness among the people. The more we talk about chemtrails, what's happening, we're being rained upon with aluminum, barium, strontium, all of that. And the effects, of course, we're feeling here as well. It's recognizing the report from the federal government of Canada that this will affect geoengineering, as they call it, chemtrails, solar radiation, whatever you want to call it, will affect climate. It's reflecting back the sunlight. But it also recommends or recognizes in the report that it's going to have different effects in different places. The moment governments admit that this is happening because of what it is they're doing, there's a liability, there's a responsibility, and that for them is a problem. So as long as the people are relatively quiet and they're more interested in a football game, a baseball game, or whatever it is today, as I said earlier, create an awareness. And I point to the sky every time I see the chemtrails, and whomever with me will know that those are chemtrails. If I'm not doing it, my wife will certainly do it. Lillian points it out every time to everyone, and that needs to happen. I guess for the most part, the populace still thinks that.
I just someone just asked me about the video, so I just posted it on the live comment section where where you can find the video on Rumble. And
governments can't do
I also cited a bunch of references that I've used and shared for years on my Rumble video, and I will because every time I friggin' post like videos and like sorry, not videos, but like references on my YouTube, it gets my videos flagged. So that's why if you want to look at like references that I cite and share, it's best that you go to Rumble.
It's impossible that it's happening. If the government came out, or the bureaucracy or whatever came out and said, we're very involved in genetically modified foods, or we're creating chemtrails, which means that you're being rained upon with aluminum or whatever, that would probably not go over too well. That would be politically very unpopular. You would have an outcry, you would have a protest, you would have a mini revolution. So they're going to try and keep it down as much as possible. You're not going to see a whole lot of politicians or bureaucrats jumping on it. The pressure is going to have to continue on. There's got to be a lot of it. And obviously, the result will be enormous public awareness. Once aware, they're going to fight it. They're going to be on our side. We're going to be together on the issue. That's important.
I first got into chemtrails when I had some solar panels fitted onto my roof. And I noticed on the days that the sun was out, it was great, 4 kilowatts, happy days. And then I noticed some days you go down to 1 or 2 kilowatts when actually the weather forecast sun. I'd never taken much interest in the weather until I was earning money out of it. And then when you find out you've earned only a fifth of what you should have earned according to weather forecast, then something wasn't quite right. And I'd never heard the word before, chemtrails. And then when I went and looked it up on YouTube, I couldn't believe that somebody would actually spray the sky with lines deliberately. And yet, as the weeks went by, I found out absolutely it's true and they were doing it. And it was costing me money. There's other subjects that have come along in the meantime when I thought, is there anything that could be done to stop this? And having found other subjects, people like Wilhelm Reich's name was coming up, and even later Tesla. Wilhelm Reich, very, very clever person in as much that he realized there's an energy in life that's very, very powerful and important and is related to good health. And after many years of investigation, he found out there were some fantastic properties to this. And he called it orgon, which is related to ether. Other people came along, people like Trevor Constable, who looked at generating and changing the weather with certain pieces of equipment. And this isn't the use of chemicals, this is actually the use of equipment which reacts with ether, and it's perfectly 100% natural. Wilhelm Reich actually found out there was amazing cures with ether, and one of them was cancer. He actually cured the people that the hospitals discarded and put them on the scrap heap basically and says, we can't cure you. And Wilhelm Reich virtually cured every single one of them. He understood what ether was about. And how we found out about the cancer is that when you change the frequencies of DNA, the DNA loses all its instructions. And that means that the DNA grows distorted and it can't grow the way that it should grow. In other words, if it's part of your skin or it's supposed to be part of your kidney, it grows into a deformed piece of the body that shouldn't even be there. But by correcting the frequency, the DNA goes back to grow how it should do. And that's one of the amazing things he was working on. Tesla proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that he can actually tap into the energy which is already there. And what I mean by that is when you have two opposing potentials, you can tap in the difference between the two potentials And that's your energy that you're actually creating. Now, Tesla said something that I thought was very interesting. I only found this out recently. He talked about ether, and he made this statement that ether controls magnetism, electricity, and all energy. Now, to actually come out and say that, he must have had some basis as to why. We know that Tesla based all his works on facts and many, many experiments. And of course, we use many of Tesla's technology today, both in electricity, magnetism, etc. And so we're in a position now where we're looking at equipment that Wilhelm Reich manufactured and made. We're looking at the way that he used it and he generated it. Now, Wilhelm Reich, he actually was called into places like California when it hadn't rained for months and months. In fact, some of these poor farmers were being bankrupt. He actually went to a place where it hadn't rained for many years. And after about 6 weeks, he did start to develop a very small amount of rain, but a moisture came into the area where all the plants started to flourish. According to what his daughter said, that area continued to flourish for another 50 years. The other thing that Wilhelm Reich noticed is the texture of the rocks changed from being crumbly to having some body back to it again. So when we talk about ether, we're not talking about just weather modification or health to the body. Ether must be some kind of energy which controls, as Tesla said, everything. It's like the link that ties and controls everything together, whether it's energy, magnetism.
Even this is where you're seeing like even with like the petrified tree stumps and like the mushrooms, like these huge mushrooms and stuff like that are looking like what we're calling rocks and boulders crystallized and stuff like that. They could go back to their original form if we just stop messing with stuff and allow things to grow and stop impacting stuff. Like I'm loving this. I'm watching this with everyone.
Electricity.
But this is also what I've talked about before countless times. But yeah, it's important. We need to still talk about it. Like it's happening even literally now.
To be able to use ether to bin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 square miles of chemtrailing, that would be fantastic. Before they use it for all the other agendas. And if we could do that, happy days. Because that's where a lot of people are looking forward to, a day where all this crap is not in their control anymore. And I believe if we could master this, ether will do exactly that.
Me too.
Tonight we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this sickness behavior. We're going to talk about why people are having these problems. We're going to talk about how the trails are affecting us, because they are now. There's no doubt. Even the EPA said so. They mentioned it about, a couple months ago, actually, last summer. They admitted it. The EPA said it's affecting you. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Craig Lewis. Listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
In the United Kingdom, they just published their mortality statistics for 2016. And you'd expect, okay, what's top 3? Cancer, heart attack, stroke. Always has been. Number 1, dementia. Number 1, which of course includes Alzheimer's, which is caused by aluminum. They found carbon nanotubes in Parisian lungs. In Turin, half of the children had severe DNA damage from nanoparticulates. And there's a study that came out recently showing how nanoparticles interfere with the nuts and bolts of the internal workings of your cells and cause rheumatoid arthritis, which is just one of the very many autoimmune diseases we're all coming down with. We don't need any more evidence. We need to get this out into the public consciousness and say, oh, hell no.
I wanted to let you know that there was a study that was released back in the summer of 2016, the Environmental Protection Agency. They declared that emissions from jet engines endanger the health of human beings and the environment. They pointed out they were investigating the possibility that lingering contrails, this is what they called them, lingering contrails contribute to dangerous heat waves, more powerful storms, lengthening of fire seasons, and other dangerous consequences. Well, there's a new study about air pollution that's revealing that, once again, the particulate, the aluminum and barium that we talk about in the...
So they're probably going to make the obvious point that I've made as well, right? So like Taylor Swift and Leo DiCaprio and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and stuff like that, they're the biggest contributors to that, right? With the jets that they're using, the ships, the yachts, with what they're pushing, the products that they're pushing. that carbon footprint, all that stuff as well.
Trails is creating dementia. For older women, breathing air that is heavily polluted by metals and other sources of fine particulates nearly doubles the likelihood of developing dementia, and the cognitive effects of air pollution are dramatically more pronounced in women who carry a genetic variant known as APOE, that's APOE-E4, which puts them at higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease.
There are so many things going on, and it's because these nanoparticles are disrupting the workings of our cells. Our bodies attack ourselves and it goes nuts. But just concentrating on what's being sprayed is only half the story. The electromagnetic aspect of this is devastating. The Russians were using the woodpecker program back in the 80s. They could change
right here.
Yeah, because it's very long wavelength. It travels a very long distance. And it's such simple technology. Our body's resonant frequency is 5 hertz. All you have to do is just point that at someone and it's, yeah. If you pick someone up and shake them at 5 times a second, they'll fall apart. There's so much research on the cognitive, physiological, and other effects of electromagnetic radiation on our bodies and our minds. And, you know, put a burrito in the microwave, you know, it does something. You'll often find you just be going about along with your day and then suddenly, like, bam, you're extremely tired. You just have to sleep. And you'll find a lot of people at the same time will have those things. You'll have people getting similar like muscle spasms in different parts of the body all over the place. I mean, it's full spectrum warfare. I mean, the electromagnetic, the spraying, all these sort of things. In Scotland last year, between 2014 and 2015, the death rate from respiratory failure went up like 14% in 1 year. That's statistically significant. I mean, why aren't they asking, why, you know, is this massive jump? Italy's death rate overall went up 11%. This is carnage.
So when you're looking at the spraying, it could be private contractors doing,
Sure.
Weather modification, it could be a number of things that they're doing. Geoengineering, of course, Matt, you know, he was the one that introduced me to the idea of geoengineering being used and doing the studies of geoengineering. That's what we talked about last time you were on the program. Well, you heard that now the bees are an endangered species.
Exactly.
I was reading about that the other day, that they now have made them an endangered species, and that's frightening.
When you must
Before we had what would they call that, hive?
Obviously.
Colony collapse disorder.
Yeah, colony collapse disorder. They said the colony collapse disorder could be because of, you know, Roundup, Monsanto, you name off all these things. But think about this.
Yeah.
The bees are dying of the same type of problems that we're having, and that is dehydration, not getting enough water, not having enough water in our bodies, having diseases that are creating this sick behavior that we're having, and the bees get it too. Even people who have good night's sleep are not feeling it. They wake up tired, they wake up dragging, and so what else could it be but something environmental, something toxic that we're being exposed to?
It's got to be above government because it's global.
Right. They're doing it all over the world.
Yeah. China, Russia, everywhere.
And then that's the thing. If we don't know who, then we don't know all of the answers for them. And if they can't make a solid opinion. One of my biggest frustrations is the line, they wouldn't do that.
This is where our government, okay, they need to pony up, okay, and use those taxpayer dollars and check these places out. Go to the airports. Even I put in for a reason airports in my standing rapid deployment team courses. So call me Government of Canada for your higher level people and media. I teach these courses. They need to like hold them accountable and go there, investigate, look at their logs, look at who they're dealing with, who they're operating with, like what they're spraying, how much they're spraying, what companies they're using, what pilots they're using, what aircrafts, which airports they're using, how it's impacted internationally. Like our law enforcement like needs to look at this stuff, right? This is stuff that's clearly impacting us at home. So this would be first, it would be municipal, and there'd be a CFAD sign in order to make it where there's a switch over to military involvement if needed.
To us.
I've heard that too. Why would they do that to us? Because they have families too. And I tell them, well, you know, I have a genetic disorder that makes me prone to cancer. And why? Because they were testing nuclear weapons in the West Deserts of Nevada, St. George, Cedar City area in Utah. My family was subjected to that radiation, which caused some DNA problems, and it got passed down to me.
And your son.
Yeah, and my son. They did that because they felt that was more important than the lives of people.
Spend a few bucks, get your rainwater analysis, you get your hair analyzed. And I have footage of these sprayers, and they show up on flight radar. I don't know any airline that does not spray. They aren't told, oh, by the way, turn this switch when you get to a certain point. It's all done centrally. There's plenty of patents where the substance actually gets injected into the exhaust. I mean, there's a US Navy patent called the powder contrail. There's so much freaking evidence. It's insane. Technocracy, this is a crackpot idea dreamed up in the 1930s. They wanted to replace the economic system with an energy-based thing. But like if you have a gold-based economy, you know how much a loaf of bread is worth in compared to the amount of gold there is. But with energy, you have to know how much energy is being stored, transferred, whatever, at all times. Hence, smart meters, smart every freaking thing. Reject it. The official line on this whole thing is, oh, we're all going to die from global warming, and we might just have to spray sulfates into the sky to reduce global warming. Oops. David Keith, Ken Calderon, and Alan Roebuck are the three main guys who go out to do this stuff. They'll only talk about sulfates. But their own papers say, actually, sulfates don't work. They stick together. They fall out of the sky. Instead, you got to use nanoparticulate aluminum, barium, strontium, magnetite, and so on. And this character, Dave's research, according to US Code 50, Section 1520A, I think, it's legal to spray chemical and biological warfare on a civilian population as long as you call it research. So it's banned as warfare, but you can do it in your own populations. So I think all the spraying is generally done by people's own militaries.
What they're doing is they're establishing a geoengineering governance regime. It's a self-proclaimed regime. They asked for papers to identify things like, should we even involve the UN? Should we take into consideration human health impacts? What role will public perception and opinion play while we establish this solar geoengineering governance regime, self-titled regime? So Patrick and I, we independently submitted papers. I hired a PhD. My paper delved into the human rights aspect, that we have the right to environmental decision-making participation. Both of our papers were, of course, rejected. It is their plan to do full-scale deployment. They claim that all of the research that we've been seeing, these grid patterns, are research. They're admitting to it. The chemtrails, the geoengineering, the solar radiation management. Okay, and now you can even look up the Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, SRMGI. Okay, it's an initiative to govern their solar radiation management, which is chemtrails, which is geoengineering. So these people are meeting, 24 scientists behind closed doors, to develop the plan for the regime to take hold to go full-scale deployment. Some days don't have chemtrails, right? Some days are clear. And really, the more clear days you get in a row, the more likelihood it is that you're going to get a grid pattern coming up. But this irregular pattern of appearance where you not only have no lines in the sky, but you also don't have the air traffic, okay? Listeners, feel free to look up at your sky. Look at that air traffic. See those days where there's nothing going on. And this irregularity in the appearance it's the clue. It's the first clue for the newbies. Chemtrails are also called solar geoengineering. It's also called solar radiation management. It's also called stratospheric aerosol injections. Okay, and what they like to do is they like to confuse us with the terminology. It's all one thing, right? It's all chemtrails. It's all geoengineering. It's all solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injections. Whatever word you want to give it, it's all treason. It's very, very obvious that chemtrail does not behave like an actual cloud formation. It forms out and fades into a milky haze, all right? Irregular pattern of appearance, the number of trails seen simultaneously at a given time. When you're sitting out there and it's a normal day and then all of a sudden a dozen planes show up and grid the sky, whereas you've seen 3 planes all day, something is going on there. That's it. It's that simple. How come all of a sudden all the planes show up at once and zigzag the sky? We got broken trails, all right? Things are going on where they're mixing chemicals in the sky. They're using the atmosphere as a laboratory. That is a quote from NASA. Using the atmosphere as a laboratory. Okay, the exhaust is often coming where the engines are not. Okay, this wakes the people up. In 1983, we had 50 companies, right? 90% of the media. 1983, 50 companies encapsulated the 90% of the media. Now it's been consolidated down to 6 companies. Those 6 companies are owned by just a couple families. Everything is controlled. They hand a script to the entire nation. And your local broadcaster is reading something that was planned to build your mental construct to control the way you think about everything.
A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday. A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday. A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday. A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday.
Well, child's happiness is priceless, right? Especially on a birthday.
A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday. A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday.
A child's happiness is priceless, especially on a birthday.
Civil society actors that, quote, manifest the will of the public. They call these astroturf because almost everything has been co-op. They contemplated how they were going to convince us that we need solar geoengineering to block out the sun. They say society is lousy at strategy, but we are not. A few suggested that to shift the conversation in productive ways, geoengineering will be characterized publicly as a terrible choice. We'll start the conversation by introducing them this problem, and we'll tell them that it's a horrible idea. Problem, reaction, solution. So here they come out immediately. Geoengineering, a horrible idea. Geoengineering climate fixes could harm billions. During this short time frame, Forbes magazine, Washington Post, chemtrails are not real, showing a picture of chemtrails. So if you're new to this, you're being educated by your trusted news sources, okay? And they're telling you there's nothing to see up there, don't worry. But wait in 6 months, they're gonna tell you they've got a cure for global warming, and it's identical to what they have proven to you does not exist. Geoengineers to spray sun-reflecting chemicals from a balloon. They think that we're so dumb that we see the lines coming out of the planes, we see these rare halos going around the sun, and then all they have to say in the newspaper is, well, we're gonna use balloons, don't worry. Geoengineering gets green light from federal scientists, 2017. March 25th, we've got new clouds for you, 12 of them. 12 new clouds? And how does this correspond to this entire agenda push? And the name for these vapor trails, Homo mutatus, which literally means man-made.
The World Meteorological Organization has decided to add 11 new cloud classifications. That's to their international cloud atlas, and this is a big deal because it is the first time they've added anything in 30 years.
Forget being on cloud 9, we are on cloud 12 because that's how many new types of clouds have been added to this historic update coming from meteorologists. I'm a little biased, right? Exciting stuff, guys. All right, so the new types include the Volatus or roll cloud, which has been designated as a whole new species. You can see it gets its name from this long horizontal tube-like shape. Next one up, we have the Cavum or the hole punch cloud. This big circular gap is sometimes caused by aircraft taking off and landing. Very easy to see, right? Makes sense there. And we also have the Spiritus. These are gorgeous. It's actually my favorite. It's kind of looking like it waves while you're underwater. I mean, these are actually beautiful. I mean, check these out. And then finally, we also have the big surfer waves of the Fluxus cloud. So beautiful, right? There's just a sample of the new additions that we have. Meteorologists, sky watchers, daydreamers, we're all geeking out, guys.
The meteorologists are all part of that same program. They're all getting handed a script and they're told to read it and they have no choice. And already it's time for governance, okay? This is something that they just shoved down our throats for the past few months, and they say they're gonna be doing it in the future, and they say, don't worry, that it's not real 6 months ago. Now, they're already talking about how are they gonna govern it. They're pushing this agenda full speed ahead. They're already talking about how to govern something that we're still slowly waking up to, that they're gonna be doing it to us publicly. This very small group of globalists claim that they have the exclusive rights to saving us, and that we don't get it, and they do. This is all of our skies. This is all of our air. This is our children's future. Everybody is involved here, all right? There was a time when people got pissed and they did something about it, and they made things change, okay? They know that they can program you through social media, okay? And we can't let that happen. It's up to us to carry this information forward. It's up to us to be the change. And if we don't do it, we're not gonna have any sun. Thank you.
Well, he's at least speaking out on this stuff, right? So he's technically a bit more of a man than like a lot of guys that are refusing to acknowledge the chemtrail, contrail stuff.
Or in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
Geoengineering, chemtrails, forced vaccinations, population control, weather modification, war games. We have not given consent. You cannot spray the atmosphere with toxic chemicals and expect no ramifications. These chemicals go into our food, our air, and our water supply. Ill effects of these have been recorded as headaches, flus, breathing problems, skin problems, and my major concern is Alzheimer's disease. Aluminium causes nerve damage. Fluoride in the water works with aluminium in the air to cross into our brain. At this moment, about 24,700 young people around the age of 30 and above have Alzheimer's. In the next 10 years, 400,000 people in Australia will have dementia. It is now the third leading cause of death in Australia. About 10 years ago, I did a degree in environmental management. It's concerning to me that in that short time, we were brainwashed to believe in population control, that our Earth could not sustain itself if we didn't intervene. The Earth has enough resources for everyone. We need to change our thinking, but also change our actions. If you have never heard of these terms before, then please start looking at the sky and make your own decisions. It's not like they can hide the spraying.
That was great. It was a great film. I really enjoyed that. Really well done. Obviously has a good team. I hope that these videos start going viral so I can get the money together or support from people within Canada that are in close proximity to me. I'm just on the outskirts of Ottawa to assist with videos. So this is from Matt Landman. I already shared the title before. I haven't watched this one yet either. I know I'm only 2 hours in, but.
Welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle podcast. I'm, as usual, Jodelle, and I'm super stoked to have.
So that's Matt Landman.
Matt Landman on again for the third time. Matt is a leader in 5G and geoengineering chemtrail awareness activism. He passionately presents unprecedented and view-changing information directly from official documentation, not woo-woo stuff, and accepted research. His love for truth has helped him promote social change through his wildly amazing documentary, Frankenskies, bringing awareness to ongoing atmospheric aerosol injections, chemtrails, weather modification, and geoengineering. So if you haven't yet watched Frankenskies, you're missing out. It's a very well done documentary, and I have a link in the show notes, so please make sure you do so. Matt, you are my brother from another mother. We grew up in the same time period, the 80s, and I appreciate how similar your thought process is with regard to EMF, climate change, being outside because everybody's indoors, eating earth-based foods. So I wanted to have you on because more is happening in the world, as everybody knows, and I want you to share your take on it with my listeners. So let's dive in. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for the lovely introduction. And yes, the world's changing rapidly every moment. Very fast. Did we talk about Maui? Did we do a show before or after Maui?
No, we did. We talked about 15-minute cities, but we haven't talked about Maui yet. So
Okay, so we have to do that really quick.
Oh my God, I can talk about both those things as well. But you know what? I'm running. This is like super long. I'll link it. I linked a bunch of references on my Rumble account. I will share what I'm talking about. I'll share my screen. So this is what I shared in my description box. So this is really good content that I really enjoyed, and a brief description or title. and some really good heavy hitters there. Eric Dubé, Santos Bonacci's in here, Mark Sargent, Dave Weiss. There's a lot of scientific and medical literature in here as well. I obviously with the COVID stuff, I have stuff in here as well for people that are interested. So I try to share like a variety of people's work. Yeah. For years, I've been sharing this information and compiled this on Word documents. And then for weather modification specifically as well, I grabbed this from another site for content because it's good stuff. And some of the stuff that I shared is are from these references, so you can take a look for yourself. Let's take a look. Weather modification by altering solar absorption, also altering composition of the atmosphere, different patents. Let's see what this one, let's see if this is a legit one. Okay, yeah, that's the one I shared already. So yeah, I share a lot on Rumble. So if you want to take a look. And there's a lot of content in there and a lot of scientific analysis as well. And so I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.